So we shall be speaking about Srila Prabhupada's style of management. And I should mention at the outset that Srila Prabhupada emphasized that management and preaching go together. In fact, he wrote that good management follows preaching like a shadow, and that the best thing is that the manager should always be preaching. At a certain stage in the history of ISKCON in India, during Srila Prabhupada's presence, Tamal Krishna Goswami, who had been the GBC for India, wanted to leave and go to the West to preach. And at first, Srila Prabhupada was reluctant because he was depending a lot on Tamal Krishna Goswami for the management of the activities in India. But eventually, Prabhupada concluded that a brief change might be beneficial. He said, yes, we can always pay a manager, but preaching is a matter of realization. He stressed how important preaching was to the movement. Without it, he said, quote, ISKCON will become rubbish. The management will be at our fingertips if the devotees simply follow the rules, chant, and take prasad. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita 12:10 purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. Just as in business, one requires a place to stay, some capital to use, some labor, and some organization to expand. So the same is required in the service of Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada said that although we do not want to waste any of those elements, the one element we cannot afford to waste is the labor or the manpower. In other words, we have to take very good care of the devotees and make sure that they are engaged. Srila Prabhupada often said that the first duty of a manager or the government is to see that everyone is engaged. Even if dealing with some of the devotees is difficult. And I cite one instance from Juhu, when Srila Prabhupada wanted his disciple Naranarayan to take charge of the gardening. And he wrote me. And this is also part of Prabhupada's idea of, utilizing land. But again, the first priority is the men. So he wrote me, you can have the gardeners decorate the whole land with flowers, and if possible, some fruits also. A week later, he added that he wanted Narayan to take charge of the gardening. Sometimes he may be difficult to live with, Prabhupada acknowledged, but good manager means he is able to satisfy everyone and live in cooperative manner with all the devotees. So I'll read that again because it's an important instruction. Good manager means he is able to satisfy everyone and live in cooperative manner with all the devotees. And if you manage things nicely, he can do tremendous work. Practically no one has more energy than Vishwakarma, who is the architect of the demigods and master builder, after whom Prabhupada had nicknamed Narayan. So yes, Prabhupada often said that the first duty of the leader or manager or government was to see that everyone was engaged. And Narayan was one example. 3 days after Prabhupada's directions to me about the gardening, he wrote again, chiding me and instructing me how to manage and engage the devotees. He knew our natures, and he was simultaneously engaging and training us all. Quote, I have received reports from Mahamsa and Chaivana, he wrote, and it appears that they are doing nicely. Some of the men, however, are complaining that they have no sufficient engagement. 2 girls have already left Bombay, and their complaint was that they had no sufficient engagement. Similarly, I have received letters from Puranjan, Vardhan, and Atmarama, and either they are not willing to work according to direction, or otherwise, how do they complain there is no sufficient engagement? I think that there is more than sufficient engagement for everyone. We have got so much to do. So Prabhupada is, in his letter, he's simultaneously instructing me, and you could say instructing the devotees. So as to the devotees, he's saying, I think there is more than sufficient engagement for everyone. We have got so much to do. And then to me, he's saying, we have to deal with so many men with different personalities. So kindly utilize their energies and at the same time keep them satisfied. That is leadership. So he's instructing me, guiding me. This is very, very important instruction. And then he again addresses the devotees. So kindly utilize their energies and at the same time keep them satisfied. That is leadership. And then for the devotees, if one man is appointed as leader, all must follow him and be obedient. Obedience is the first law of discipline. They are pointing out irregularities, but they themselves are not doing their duties. So they're pointing out the irregularities in others. They came to serve, now they don't want to serve. So there is some excuse. Oh, irregularity. Let me go away. The workers should not suggest irregularities. And Srila Prabhupada went on to remind us of our greater mission, our higher responsibility to reclaim the fallen souls on behalf of Krishna. And we were always inspired to try at least to work cooperatively to please Srila Prabhupada, because we had such an important mission. Srila Prabhupada gave us such an important mission. So in this letter, Prabhupada wrote, so actually we have taken a very responsible task on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At the present moment, to speak the truth, the whole population of the world are demons and animals. It may be a very strong aspersion on the people of the world, but that is the fact. But still, because they are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, so originally they were pure. And therefore, it is the mission of Krishna to get back his parts and parcels to home. Exactly like a father likes to get back his son at home, because this son has gone out of home for false happiness. But the people are so mad. They're talking so many nonsense things, nonsense philosophy, nonsense science. And our task is to meet all of them and at the same time pacify them in their lunatic condition. So I am sure you are a very good soul to act on behalf of Krishna and do it nicely. Krishna will give you the proper intelligence. He is sitting in your heart. Simply, he wants to see us working sincerely. So Srila Prabhupada put everything in the light of Krishna consciousness, that whatever service we were doing was meant to further the mission of Krishna, which is to get all the fallen conditioned souls back home, back to Godhead. And to fulfill that mission, we should be prepared to go beyond our usual limitations. And Srila Prabhupada did inspire us to go beyond our expected limitations. In any case, I was affected by the criticism of the devotees. And there was also criticism from Srila Prabhupada in relation to some neglect of the deities. And, in his letter to me, Srila Prabhupada wrote, this is the most abominable affair. I was like so happy. And it really affected me. And I tried to, summon all my courage and strength and write a proper reply to Srila Prabhupada. But I had to mention that I was struggling. And Srila Prabhupada wrote back a very nice letter in which he explained his criticism. And his letter, pacified me. Prabhupada, understanding my heart, in his next letter, explained his service to me in such a way that I could appreciate his is clearly meant for my benefit. Actually, he wrote, it is the duty of the spiritual master to find fault with his students so that they may make progress, not that he should always be praising them. So if you find some criticism, kindly accept it in that spirit. I am only interested that you, along with all my other students, should become Krishna conscious. Prabhupada's words and sincere desire acted upon my heart and influenced me to improve my efforts. And I reported to him about some of the progress we, had made. In his next letter, he expressed his appreciation for my efforts and reinforced his earlier statements about management, encouraging me to continue in the same spirit. Quote, I am glad to hear your explanation of how the men are being engaged there in Bombay. That will be the test of your management, how well the men are satisfied by their engagements. I am very glad to hear that Narayan is doing so much work and that Puranjan has decided to remain there. He has decided rightly. Seeing things from the perspective of Shastra and reminding us of our higher goals and the means to attain them through parampara, in his next letter, Prabhupada wrote, yes, by Krishna's grace, we have a very responsible task before us. So combinedly, we should do it nicely so that everything goes on systematically. Rupa Goswami says that the things are enthusiasm, patience, conviction, acting according to the order of Shastra and Guru, and always keeping oneself in a society of devotees. And this makes our devotional service successful. So our serious students should follow Rupa Goswami's advice. At that time, Srila Prabhupada hadn't translated Srila Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamrita. And here he's basically repeating what Rupa Goswami says in the Upadeshamrita. Utsaha nischaya daryat tat karma pravartana. So you could say part of Prabhupada's management was to keep us Krishna conscious. And so at the same time that he was giving us instructions on management, he also gave us instructions on how to maintain our Krishna consciousness. Because everything in ISKCON pretty much depends on Krishna consciousness. Now, Prabhupada knew my mind. This incident goes back to maybe 1974 in June. And so I was always attracted to the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. And I imagined that one day I would be like them, roaming the forests of Vrindavan, chanting Krishna, Krishna. But he was concerned that his property be managed properly. And one evening he spoke to it. He spoke to me about it. Raghunath Das managed his father's estate just like an expert businessman, he told me. Similarly, you should also manage your father's estate, meaning his estate, my spiritual father's estate. Raghunath Das managed his father's estate just like an expert businessman. Similarly, you should also manage your father's estate. Then you go to Vrindavan and become a Goswami. Now, under Prabhupada's direction, anyway, I think I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that in a minute. So, maybe a year or two later, we had applied for permission to build the temple at Chuhu. And the police commissioner wrote a letter refusing permission, because his permission was also required. So the police commissioner wrote a letter refusing the permission on the grounds that the bhajan had been a nuisance, and that if we had a bigger temple, they would become more of a nuisance. So this drew fire from Srila Prabhupada. He was so upset and so angry. So he got the news during the Mayapur Vrindavan festival. And so devotees from all over the world had come to Mayapur for the Mayapur part of the festival, and then they had proceeded with Srila Prabhupada to Vrindavan. And in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada received this news that the police commissioner refused the permission because the bhajans were a nuisance. So Prabhupada asked all the devotees who were in Vrindavan for the festival to come to Bombay to protest the refusal of the permission by the police commissioner. So we began to organize preaching programs, but most of the devotees who came from Vrindavan would be back at the temple during the day. And Prabhupada was concerned about how the devotees would be engaged. Again, the first duty of the manager or the leader is to see that the devotees are engaged. Prabhupada was concerned about how the devotees would be engaged, and he asked his managers what the devotees would do. We replied that we would have a program in the temple all day long, alternating readings, kirtans, and discussions about Krishna consciousness. Very good, he approved. After a few days, Prabhupada asked how the program in the temple was going, whether the devotees were enjoying chanting and reading and hearing. Well, frankly, Srila Prabhupada, Tamal Krishna had to inform him, most of the devotees aren't coming. And the ones who do come, most of them fall asleep. All right, Prabhupada replied, if they're all Sudras, let them work in the garden. But everyone must be engaged. You tell the devotees that if they're actually Brahmins, they should sit in the temple and be engaged in kirtan and Krishna katha. And if they are not Brahmins, if they are Sudras, they can work in the garden. But nobody can remain idle. Nobody can sleep. Vishnu Jan was in charge of the temple program, and he was a very charismatic figure, and he led beautiful kirtans. So Vishnu Jan was in charge of the temple program, but in spite of Prabhupada's words, the devotees still didn't come or work in the garden. One day Vishnu Jan told them, Prabhupada is not pleased that we are all so lazy. We should do something. He says that if you just sit around, you'll get sick. After 2 weeks, the Australian devotees who had come became restless and asked me to approach Prabhupada on their behalf. There was little engagement for them in Bombay, they said, and they would have a lot of work to prepare for Prabhupada's imminent visit to their country. When I passed along their request to leave, Prabhupada had me deliver them a stern reply. What is the question of no engagement? There are so many opportunities to read and chant. Don't be impatient, wanting to go here and there. So, yeah, there's always engagement. We can always chant and hear, and do other service as well. Now, I wish to address the important point of cooperation, which Srila Prabhupada emphasized, especially towards the end in Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, Prabhupada told the devotees, as Tamal Krishna recorded in his diary, quote, your love for me will be tested how after my departure you maintain this institution. We have glamour and people are feeling our weight. This should be maintained. Not like Gaudiya Math. After Guru Maharaj's departure, so many, quote, acharyas, end quote, came up. Later, Tamal Krishna told Satsvarupa that Prabhupada had said, your love for me will be shown by how much you cooperate to keep this institution together after I am gone. The same message. And Bhakti Charu Swami recalled, when Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan during his last days, Tamal Krishna would read him the letters that devotees wrote to Srila Prabhupada, and his divine grace would dictate his replies. And sometimes he would also make comments. One devotee had written that he wanted to offer his longevity to Srila Prabhupada so that Prabhupada could continue to be with us on the planet. It was a very sweet letter, steeped with emotion. However, Srila Prabhupada reacted in what seemed to me a rather unusual way, and commented that our real love for him would be shown by how we cooperate with each other to maintain his mission. That incident, this is Bhakti Charu Swami speaking, that incident left a very deep impression in my heart, and I became aware that the best way to show my love for Srila Prabhupada is through my cooperation with the devotees of ISKCON who are serving his divine grace so sincerely to continue his mission. Prabhupada had made the same point in a letter in 1973. The test of our actual dedication and sincerity to serve the spiritual master will be in this mutual cooperative spirit to push on this movement and not make factions and deviate. And this reminds me of a very beautiful purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Srila Prabhupada describes the mood of service and appreciation among devotees, as it should be. This is his purport from Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.12. He writes, "Everyone should be friendly for the service of the Lord." I'll repeat that. Everyone should be friendly for the service of the Lord. Everyone should praise another's service to the Lord and not be proud of his own service. This is the way of Vaishnava thinking, Vaikuntha thinking. There may be rivalries and apparent competition between servants in performing service. But in the Vaikuntha planets, the service of another servant is appreciated, not condemned. This is Vaikuntha competition. There is no question of enmity between servants. Everyone should be allowed to render service to the Lord to the best of his ability, and everyone should appreciate the service of others. Such are the activities of Vaikuntha. Since everyone is a servant, everyone is on the same platform and is allowed to serve the Lord according to his ability. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivisto matasmita jnanam apohanam cha. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart, giving dictation according to the attitude of the servant. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayantite. To those who are devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they come to me. Then Prabhupada continues, everyone is actually a servant, not an enemy or friend, and everyone is working under different directions from the Lord, who directs each living entity according to his mentality. So that should be our mood amongst ourselves. Everyone should be friendly for the service of the Lord. Everyone should praise another's service to the Lord and not be proud of his own service. This is the way of Vaishnava thinking. Again, very near to the end, Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan, Prabhupada, well, it was like a like a major assignment that Srila Prabhupada gave the managers in Vrindavan, that the temple bell should be rung every hour on the hour and every half hour. So when Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, when the time came for the temple bell to ring, Prabhupada didn't hear it. And he said, "This is my concern, that such a huge, huge establishment, if not properly, regularly managed, then everything will be finished." He had been insisting for years that the temple authorities arrange for the regular ringing of the bell and considered it a test of their management. So when Prabhupada said, "This is my concern, that such a huge, huge establishment, if not properly, regularly managed, then everything will be finished," Tamal Krishna responded, "I don't think that's going to happen. We're too much indebted to you to allow what you have established to become spoiled." And Prabhupada replied, "Please see to that." So, one last point in relation to temple construction. As many of you know, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was distressed by his disciples after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur constructed a big marble temple at Bagh Bazar. The disciples were simply fighting and quarreling, who will occupy which room, which I take to mean also means who will have what position. And at Radhakund, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, told him, that if I could take the marble from the temple and sell it and print books, that would be better. If you ever get money, print books. Just 1 minute. So, in Juhu, Srila Prabhupada had us build a big temple. And so I was thinking, what should be our mood? And in a talk in Mayapur in 1974, Prabhupada had explained his purpose in constructing such big temples and his concern that we use them in the proper mood. Quote, "We have got this nice grand building. If we think this is my building, then there will be mishap. My Guru Maharaj personally told me, when we were living in a rented house, if we could collect 200 or 300 rupees, we were living very nicely at Ultadanga. But since we have been given this marble palace, there is friction between our men. Who will occupy this room? Who will occupy that room? Who will be proprietor of room? Everyone was planning in a different way. If we forget our position, if we become pound shilling men, property men, then Krishna will be lost. Because Krishna is a kinchana gochara, easily approached by those who have no material possessions. Therefore, we should always remember that we possess this nice house, not for our comfort, but so people will come, because they are not accustomed to uncomfortable living conditions. If we would have invited people, come and sit down on this ground, there would have been no possibility. Therefore, we must keep Krishna's temple very nice so that people will come and we shall preach. That is the philosophy. Not that because we have got this nice house, therefore we should be very much attached. Attachment must be there, but for Krishna's service. The temple must be very clean. The establishment must be very nice. What for? For attracting devotees. This is the purpose, not for our personal benefit. So I have given an overview of Srila Prabhupada's style of management and how he addressed issues of preaching, managing, engaging devotees. The main duty to engage devotees and keep them happy and satisfied in devotional service.
Vanchakalpatrivascha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Giriraj Maharaj ki
Jai.